ghosts, you talk about them. Aliens, you talk about them. Are you kidding me, Wolfman? You literally had ghosts calling on a ghost box, but you're going to lose a lot of credibility. Lake Monster gobble you up in one fucking bite. I'm calling you out, my friend. You were scared of the girl from Texas. Well, I sure wouldn't be sitting there admiring the rippling, glistening fucking muscles of the fucking marsupial. He was hairier than this Sasquatch. Oh my goodness. Who in the world are you? Hollering like that. Angry as blood. Do your neighbors hear you? You must live in the forest for you to yell that loud. The Monster Castle. Paranormal radio.
Witnesses have described it as not quite right.
Right. The wolf bag. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
I'm only over here because I heard your sweet fucking voice on the phone.
Here we are, yeah. We are live. This is Monster Castle Paranormal Radio. Welcome, everybody. I am the Wolfman Mike. And we have Darren and
Yes.
JP with us.
What's going on, everybody? We have a great show tonight. Welcome.
Yeah. We got a great guest.
Yeah.
His name is
Can
Constantine.
the guest hear us?
Yes, I hear everybody.
Oh, yeah. That's just a little button.
All right. Good.
No problems. Constantine is a paranormal investigator who has been used by police and other people for investigating paranormal events. I don't know a whole lot about him, actually, so I'm going to find out tonight. He's also a musician. He's got some great synthesizer and rap kind of stuff. I think everybody would really dig this too. I'm going to play some of that too. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, but you're cutting into my AFC wildcard playoff time. I'm just telling you.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Maybe
Go
you could watch
Pats.
it on the side.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine.
You can always watch it. Just turn
Maybe
the,
it'll be
just
up
turn
by
the sound
21
down.
and a half.
That's okay. That's fine.
Are you going to start
I'm
with...
teasing.
Where's the intro, Wolfman?
Intro.
I played it. You did not hear that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We couldn't hear it on our side.
No. The intro you don't hear on your side. That way we can continue talking through the intro.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I can let you hear it, but I thought it was better without it. I don't... Yeah, anyways, let's get
Should we
right
start
to
the
it.
interview?
Yes. Let's get to it. Right to the meat.
Constantine,
Yes,
Constantine, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Rhode Island, in the
Oh,
city.
wow.
My wife lived there.
Nice place.
You're kidding me.
Nope.
What city? Where did she live?
I'm not sure. I just know she was there from like 5 to 8. Yeah, it's a small place.
Ah, it is a small place. It's a small, busy place. A lot goes on there.
What do you mean? Why is it so busy? Because it's highly populated, or a lot of
It's
ghosts?
just jamming. It's just the culture. It's a very outgoing culture with people just are out and about all the time. There's beautiful ocean, and Providence is a very sophisticated small city. Lots of restaurants, lots of clubs. It's a tourist destination. It's very
Nice.
ethnic.
And
Yeah, it's
what's
cool.
What's the state motto?
Hope.
I forgot. It's something to do with living free or.
No, it's hope.
Hope?
That's what it is. It's
Oh, it's
hope.
hope.
It's the word hope.
Oh, Oh, okay. I knew it was something poignant. It's a great place. Amazing.
Right.
How old were
is
you?
The most important emotion.
It sure is. Don't lose hope.
It's like Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, where are we at here, Mike? Where are you at?
I'm just making sure at the start of the show that all your sound levels are nice and even and everything's
good.
good. So,
So why don't
it sounds
you have,
great.
Constantine, do you have some sort of background? What's your specialty? And have you anything to promote? Are you a writer? I'm not sure. I'm kind of catching up to
Yeah.
you here. So.
Well, I mean, in terms of the paranormal, I have a team that I'm a member of. It's called Deadline Paranormal. We're in Pennsylvania. We have an investigation coming up on the 19th, as a matter of fact. And these are all law enforcement guys. So some retired state people, some local active guys, a couple of COs. So we've always had a good match personality-wise. And so that's really where I got rolling in terms of structured investigations and that type of thing. And that's what led to me making contacts within the law enforcement community, which allowed me to do some police work too. So my specialty is, if you would call it that, is I don't like labels, but you have to pick something. So I label myself as an intuitive. I'm not a psychic. I'm not an empath. I'm not a medium. I just do what I do. And my ability is to be able to read locations and understand events and become aware of people whose bodies have ceased to function and their egos still remain in an ego struggle. People call those spirits. So that's what I do. I figure out how it works. My whole goal is to figure out clearly, without mystery, how the process of dying actually works.
Well, how did you first get in touch with the police, and what exactly do you try to do for them?
Well, I had just, so your listeners understand, there really is no, there are no celebrities that work with law enforcement on investigations. Like what you see on TV are little slices of someone who may do what I do at one point. And you get into it by really networking. Is one person introduces you to another, and then you get introduced to detectives. And if you come with an introduction, they're more open to considering bringing me in so they can gather information. Their detectives are detectives. Yeah. So detectives are detectives, and they want to be able to build a strong enough case to arrest someone, try them in court, and put them in jail. It's not.
So
it's a very specific process for them.
Can you give us a specific example of like one of the cases that you helped work on? Was it like a murder case or? Yeah,
they're almost always murder cases. Sometimes they're cold cases. Sometimes they're active. It depends. I think.
Well, what's like one of the more famous ones that you were part of?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. There's one detective that I've worked with on a repeat basis, And I have a process. So when we work together, I have to tell them, this is how I work, so we proceed in the process. And the process is they don't tell me anything, and the case has a neutral label. I need a label for the case. I need a person looking for an answer, a label, and me. So my detective calls me and says, I've got a case. And I said,
It's
what's
usually
the
when
label? Pardon me?
Is it usually when they're stuck that they call you, or do they just call you?
Yeah, it's
To help
usually
out.
when it's when they're stuck. But detectives have their own intuition, and sometimes they have hunches, and they really believe that a particular individual is involved or something happened. And if I can go in and not know any information and tell them what they already know, it corroborates their own case. So sometimes I'm affirming what they know, but sometimes I'm uncovering motives that they weren't aware of. And many times I'm uncovering facts that they weren't aware of. And they take that and they build that into their case. And it's not
Can
like
you-
they write down in their logbook, oh, Constantine said this. It's not how it works. They have their whole process, their paperwork, and I'm just another source. I'm another tool.
Can
So
you
anyways,
specifically
Yeah,
talk about
I'm
one
gonna-
case where you came in?
Yes, exactly. So we had this one case, and it was labeled the cabin. And once I have that label, oftentimes it's within minutes that I start getting information, and I read remotely first. So I said, this is the victim. This is not their main house. This is a place that he comes and goes to.
Wow.
And this is, it's certain things I pick up on right away. And I said, this is about sex. It feels like kinky sex. It almost feels
boy.
like a sex ring or something like that.
Right.
And I said, I keep getting an image, and this is not the victim, of this guy that I would call the cowboy. I said, I see a guy with a cowboy hat, a vest, cowboy boots, and he thinks he's a cowboy. And I don't know who this is, but
That is
it seems like this guy walks through the woods to meet the victim at this house. I see him meeting him, walking through the woods to meet him there. So there were lots of other details, but the impressive part about this is after giving them a lot of details, they said, look, we want you to come down to the barracks. We want to take you on site. So I said, great. So we get into the squad car, and there's detectives, there's officers in uniform, everybody's packing pistols. It's cool. I really enjoy this. And we drive up to the cabin, which is like a vacation home. It's not really a cabin, as I saw for the first time. And it's on a shared driveway. And as we drive up, I start to have a lot of anxiety. And I said, we're going to get caught. And the response was, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. I'm just telling you, we're going to get caught. So we pull into the property, and about 2 minutes later, a pickup truck drives up, and this guy steps out. And I said to my detective, I said, well, we just got caught. And this guy steps out wearing a cowboy hat, a vest, and cowboy boots.
Oh, Lord. Is
And
he
I
the next door neighbor?
It's the next door
There's the
neighbor.
guy.
And he's the main suspect. He found the body, and he would take care of the property and walk back and forth through this wooded area to take care of the property. So, that's the type of thing. When I identify
You had
things
a,
like that, they
you had a-
immediately go, huh?
You had it solved the moment you got there.
Say it again, please.
You pretty much didn't even have to go into the cabin. Or did you?
Yeah. And they had me actually interview the suspect, which was a first, and that was a little nerve-wracking. Because, yeah, you're dealing with life and death here. This is not fooling around. They're not fooling around. I'm not fooling around. And what I say impacts the future of this individual. So it's a great responsibility. It's not lighthearted at all.
Do you remember how the interview went?
Yeah, they once they didn't explain this to me, but I knew they were hoping that my presence would encourage the suspect to admit guilt. Because when I'm working, the whole atmosphere changes. It's just everything changes. People change. It's like I have an influence beyond just being there. So they were hoping to use that in their favor. So we went to the guy's house. He came to the front door, and I very seriously, he asked who the hell I was, and I just had to explain. I didn't really tell him what I did. I said, I told him I was a consultant. I'm working with the police. And he started to cry. He started to cry.
Whoa.
And I said, it's time to tell the truth. And in a kind of a gentle manner, I was trying to get him to be more forthcoming. The story is very complicated. We haven't really got into it, but there's another suspect where this guy was having sex with a prostitute. And the theory is that the neighbor, this guy, was actually in a gay relationship with the victim and found them and shot the victim with his own gun. And when he called the police and said he found the body because he was checking on the house, they never recovered the gun. And they know very well that he has the gun. And they never recovered it. So, the things you see on TV and the things that you hear about on investigations, it's really not like that. It's really much more real. There is a lot of sex involved in not only police work, but in paranormal investigations because it's a great factor in producing guilt. There's lots of drugs. There's lots of, abuse. It's not these, good-natured spirits you see on ghost investigation shows. It's not like that at all. It's real people with real problems. And there's certain things I pick up on right away. And I use the term uncomfortable sex. Odd sexual relationships, sexual abuse, drugs. Drugs are really easy for me to sniff. I can tell when the victim was a drug user. It's a very clear mark. Abuse, physical abuse, has its own feel. I can tell when that's happened. And the occult. The occult absolutely leaves a mark that I can read.
Wow.
So
have you?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what does that look? What do you mean? What does that mean? Or is it just kind of not more than a hunch, but is it something like more intuitive?
You feel it?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's intuition, but I have a highly developed sense of visual sense inside my head. But the phrase I would use is, I smell it. I can smell drugs. I can smell the occult. It's not just a feeling. It's deeper than that.
Right.
And it's an overlay that kicks in right from the beginning. Like if I go in, for example, this investigation we have coming the 19th. If I walk in the property and I say, this is about drugs.
Hang on, Constantine. Constantine, I got to interrupt you. Remember you told me that whenever you're on radio or something that you get some kind of weird sound interference? Well,
Yeah.
we're experiencing that. Your voice started.
Now you're back.
It sounded
You're back.
really weird there. It just started
Maybe you moved the phone.
modulating, and I don't know. That sounded pretty weird to
Yeah,
me.
it's. I don't say that because I think it's cool, or I mean, it's just noteworthy. It happens so often, and I'm honestly, I can't always tell you the reason why for that. I'm not sure why, but when I start to work, I haven't, and I'm not saying this in a boastful way. I just have an influence on things outside of my physical body.
And it's like a smell.
I have a big consciousness, and I don't mean that in an enlightenment sense. I mean in a physical sense. My buzz extends way out from my body, more so than the average person. So when I enter a place, I can change it.
You affect the people around you.
Yeah,
You're in tune with them.
absolutely.
Is this something we all can do, or
That's an empathic thing.
I think it is something we all can do. One of my goals has always been to demystify all this. It's not magic. It's not mystical. It's something that's innate to all human beings. I just happen to have it like on steroids, and I've always been this way. It's just like some people are musicians, some people aren't. Well, some people are great musicians, some people, are weekend musicians. I just happen to have this ability. And I've trained myself over the years to produce better and better results. I can recognize what information is relevant. You think of what goes on in your head. You get a million pictures flooding through your mind at any given situation lots of times. Well, I have the ability to pick out the pictures that are relevant. And that's kind of, I've developed that over the years.
how old were you when you first knew that you were different? Or that your parents knew you were different?
Well, I don't know who's talking, but that voice is all weird sounding.
I think I fixed that.
My whole
Did
life.
you hear the
I heard the question.
like
yeah.
a time?
Yeah, my entire life. From my earliest memories, even as a child, I always knew when adults were lying. And I used to think, like I'm 5. And I used to think,
Nice.
why are you lying to me? Like I always had a sense of who was sincere, who was insincere. I just took it for granted. I didn't know. My parents hated it. Yeah, they really didn't like it.
Did you believe in
'Cause I was like
Santa?
I was like this know-it-all kid, you know what I mean? But to me, I just my mind was just ahead of normal people. And it's just always been like that.
Wow. And you were always musical, too, from a young age?
I'm always musical, and I really feel that those two abilities stem from the same source. Like, how does a musician know how to improvise? They follow their gut. So they know that at this point I need a big chord or whatever. It's the same thing. You train. After you train over the years, you get better at it. You learn to just let it flow. So there are sometimes some of the pieces I've written, I've literally played out the piece once, one take, and it just sticks. And then I produce it after that. Because that first take was the one from the heart that worked.
I love these new programs that you can get. So because when I do my first take, I'm a musician too, right? And
Right.
the first take's always the one with your heart in it. Yeah, but
It is.
we always used to lose that one because of it's got this wrong or that wrong. Now you can correct all that. If there's a little imperfection, we can correct the timing. We can correct out of tune.
Oh, yeah.
We can correct that now and keep those first takes. I love that, man. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. You can quantize it, you can auto tune it, you can enhance the quality, you can add instruments to it. But I look back and I think, how many of my songs are literally composed, at least the melodies and the basic changes, in like 5 or 10 minutes of playing. I'm just in a mood, and it just strikes me, and it just sounds good, and I just go with it, and then I build it. Like modern music is built. You assemble it. And then, it will take weeks after that of assembling different pieces and cutting and splicing and adding. And then a more acceptable sound comes out for the modern ear.
Yeah.
You should play one of his songs.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a good one-take song?
Let's see what time we're at.
Yeah,
it's almost the bottom of the hour anyway, so as soon as you want.
Let me suggest something. If you can, this is a ballad. It's a very emotional ballad. It's called "Let You." If you're on SoundCloud, where you pulled the music from?
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
And when we get back from the musical break, I'd actually really like to ask you, aside from these great intuitive skills you have, your brain, and what's working inside of you, what are your primary tools? And so maybe after the music, if you could think of some of the things that you would typically use in an investigation. Mike, are you finding his songs okay?
Oh, yeah, I have it lined up already.
Radio.
Okay, this is Let You. I gotta crank this, hang on. This is Let You by Constantine, St.Michael. And where is it? Here. Whoop, I missed it. Had it lined up there. Yeah. Pushed the wrong little button. There it is. Let You by Constantine St.Michael. Here we are.
Hi, my name's Phil, and I've got a warehouse full of nails that I have to sell at big discount prices. All shapes, all sizes. I've got a surplus of nails that I have to sell. Just look at these babies. 2-inch finishing nails. Fine enough for Mom to hang small pictures around the house. While a 1-pound bag of 2-inch finishing nails cuts at you back 59 cents, but at Phil's Nails, I'll let you steal them for 56 cents a pound. That's right, 56 cents a pound. And feast your surprised eyes on these babies. 5-inch spikes with 3/8-inch head. That's right, a 3/8-inch head. Why, if you can't hit this nail on the head, then you need real thick glasses. They're strong enough to penetrate this 4x4 section of wet spruce, where other nails just crumple and curl and become playthings for ghetto kids. While a 1-pound bag of 5-inch spikes cuts at you back 89 cents a pound. But at Phil's Nails, I'll let you rob me blind for just 86 cents. That's right, 86 cents. I got concrete nails, roofing nails, double-headed nails, inox nails, all at big discount prices. So if you want nails, you come and see me. My name's Phil, and these are my nails. I want to save you some money. I'm at 3142 Danforth Boulevard, right next to a pile of old tires. I'm putting nails in my own coffin with this sale.
And we are back. That was a great commercial.
Yeah.
Nice. So we are here with Constantine St.Michael. Before we went to the music, which was awesome, by the way. Actually, why don't you tell us about that song?
Well, I am a pretty well classically trained piano player. I was a jazz piano player. And, I was a rock musician. So I play piano. And that song, when you hear the piano in it, I played that one time. And then I added all the synthesizers. So I couldn't tell you what those chords are. I have no idea. If you asked me to play that song, I'd have to listen to it and teach myself how to play it. I've never played it.
It was really
publicly.
good.
I've never played it again.
It's a haunting tune. I really, you're putting your emotion into it. You can tell. What were some of your musical influences then?
Oh, everything. I mean, I listened. My parents were good in this one sense, is that they started putting a lot of different music in front of me in terms of records when I was very young. So I listened to classical music, big band. I remember they had an album that was, and this is in the late 50s, early 60s, that was called the Mambo, which is a African rhythmic dance. And I really got in, my father was a drummer, so I really got into a percussive style of piano playing, very rhythmic. But the most influential piano player for me is a jazz artist named Keith Jarrett. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Sure. A lot of people are. Yeah, I mean, he's an improvisational jazz player. And that's what I was, an improvisational jazz player. I just would sit down and make shit up. And I could do it for an hour. And that's that song. I just sat down one day. I was in an emotional mood, and that came out. Luckily, I recorded it. And then I worked on it with the synthesizer, for weeks after that to get that final sound. And then my engineer worked on it to produce it properly. And that came out. And you can feel it. I'm not a lyricist. I don't have the ability to write words. I speak through notes. So it's a subtle process to get just notes to convey an emotional story, but I think it works in that song very well. You can feel exactly what I'm feeling.
Definitely. It definitely shows through the work. So that's the most important aspect, I'd imagine, and most fulfilling part of being a musician. So I guess you could say, as to get back to our other part of the conversation, I guess you could say music might be one of your tools for your job, just to maybe get maybe it helps you kind of get into the right frame of mind. Would you agree with that? And maybe talk about some of the other things that you would consider to be tools for your trade.
Well, for me, to answer the music question, the phrase that I would use is music is my final friend. Music never leaves me. It doesn't get mad at me. It doesn't go away. It's my last refuge of sanity, and it will always be there. It's the most important thing in my life in many ways, because it's how I get in touch with these worlds inside me. Tools, I don't use any tools. They're of no importance to me. My team uses all the tools. EMF meters, videos, anything that you can have, they have. They're all cops. So they want to video everything, you know what I mean? They want to record everything. And I could care less. I already know what's going on. I'm not interested in pictures, EVPs, none of it. It has no interest to me.
Do you even journal or write down aspects? Do you use even a notepad or anything? No? Just all in your head?
I have a process. Yes. No, I take that back. I begin the investigation remotely, and I communicate it through text. So in that sense, I have a journal. And that way we can keep track of my texts, because sometimes I ramble. You know what I mean? And I'm not always right on the first time. Sometimes I have to bounce around a little bit and fine-tune it. So it's nice to have that text record. But when I'm on site, I just go into my zone, and one of the guys on my team, one of the founders, Jim Fozzie, it's Jim Fozzie and Tony Poinkowski are the two founders of the team. Jim is my handler, and he's the guy who he's my tether, to the real world. And he will guide me and sometimes ask a little question or just kind of assist. But I just walk it off and start talking. As a matter of fact, you're familiar with the show The Dead Files?
Yes.
Amy Allen. You know what I'm talking about?
No, not off the top. Do either of you? I'm not familiar.
Not exactly. But go ahead.
That's
Dead Files, yes, but not the other one.
That's where she goes in first, and she works with a detective, and they don't know what the other one's doing. But she's a perfect example of how I work. She has a handler. They walk in, and she goes into her zone, and she just starts spouting. She says, I'm getting this guy, and she would be my role model. Now, I'm not saying I'm as good as she is. Yeah, that's my style.
Okay.
So
what do they empty the house? Your handler ushers you in like you're in the zone mentally, and then you just go in and just start talking?
Yeah, lots of times I don't like to drive to sites, so we usually meet, and they drive, and I kind of get into, because I've already pre-read it, so I've already kind of made contact. I'm already there before I get there, and I find I get a lot of information from outside, from the property itself, too. So it's not uncommon that one side of the property is more important than the other side of the property. I mean, there are situations where I get out of the car and I start running, and I know I'm running. It's not like I'm not conscious. I know I'm running, but I'm not even sure why I'm running. I just have this gut feel that I need to run over there as fast as I can. And, I'll drive up and I'll say, I'm looking at this concrete staircase, and it's important, and I'll jump out of the car and I'll just run around to the back of the building, and the staircase will be there. Stuff like that. And then, like this investigation on the 19th is what we call residential. So we're going into someone's home who is having an issue. So, I mean, I'm a professional, so I don't just go and do idiotic stuff. I don't like to have children around at all, though. There can't be kids around.
Yeah,
kids and pets.
I hate kids.
Have to go away.
You hate
No, I don't hate
I'm just
kids,
kidding.
We're joking.
No, because once again, if the spirit it involves, these are uncomfortable conversations. Lots of times, so they're not fit for children.
Sometimes it's a child that's having the issue, though. And
Well, and that's true, but at the same time, I kind of like to not have them there because I don't want to frighten them.
Right.
I don't want to interview them. I don't need to interview them. I know what's going on better than they do.
Right.
So it's kind of better that they're not there.
So,
But not
I
to
like
say that there wouldn't be an investigation where I would speak directly with the child involved.
Now, that does raise an interesting question. Are you held to any kind of ethical standards, or like in the medical field, doctors and therapists? I'm a mental health therapist, and we're held to HIPAA standards. Do you have any kind of is there anything that, like, any paperwork or contracts that where you have to kind of lay down where your boundaries are, or do you just kind of go for it?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I have my team now, but I've worked with many other teams, and I've worked with teams that have full legal documents that they make people sign before the team goes in. And I have my own ethical position. I never harm anyone. My information is always shared from a benevolent point of view, even though it may be difficult and uncomfortable. I'm there to help people, and I take that very, very seriously.
In fact, the HIPAA standards and the standards, my ethical standards that I'm held to, our primary focus, our number one ethical concern is to always do good to whoever we're working with. So that makes perfect sense.
And the short version of it is, as a team, but as my own person, I always want to leave the site better than when I walked in. So, people, a common thing and with paranormal teams is they clear the spirits out. Well, you can't clear spirits out. That's nonsense. The process of when your body ceases to function and your ego remains and you're in an ego struggle, you can't burn magic leaves and make that spirit go away. It does not work like that. It's a process that we all go through, and sometimes you can assist that person in that process, but
This is where all the real freaks hang out.
what's that?
I missed that.
Oh yeah, people really don't like it when I say things like this because they want it all to be magical, and it's much too important to be silly like that.
Right.
Constantine,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Do you ever get totally overwhelmed when you're in there? Have you ever gotten just like a panic attack?
No, I'm in complete control all the time. And when you work at my level, you have to be, because I'm not afraid of anything, and it has to be that way because remaining spirits, if they're psychotic in life, they'll be psychotic after they're dead. And they do things to make you afraid, and you can't show fear. You just can't. So once again, lots of people on TV and in the community, they want it to be all scary and everything. It's not scary at all.
Have you ever been
There's
scared even
no
once,
reason
like when
to be
you're...
afraid.
Okay.
Go ahead. Say it.
Have you ever been afraid even when you were younger, before you were polished? Have you ever been scared at all in those situations?
No.
Even once?
I'm being
No?
honest. They never scared me at all. It just was so natural to me. I mean, I've been scared in my life. Of course I have. But when
there's a difference between scared and startled. I've been startled by things. It freaks me out. It causes your adrenaline, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's hard to describe the state of mind I get into. But in many ways, it's very peaceful. Even though,
Get closer to
Something happened to his sound.
You're fading out.
You're back in the can. That's weird.
Maybe the spirit.
Move around a little
I
bit.
haven't changed. I'm just talking into my phone.
Wow. Big difference.
That's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, it's not on my end either. Just
What
me.
I hear it. I hear him.
We can hear
when
you
I
still.
start
It's just
talking about it, when I start talking about it, I kind of go into that place.
Wow.
it's crazy.
It is. It's crazy. It's probably affecting the phone line. The phone signal.
You're a little better now.
I don't know. It started echoing my voice for a while there too. Like maybe you hit speakerphone by accident.
Then.
That's what I'm thinking.
No, I'm on speakerphone from the beginning. I haven't changed. I'm sitting still and I'm talking into my phone. I mean, it is a cell phone, so, stuff could happen, but, yeah, I have no explanation.
That is freaky. I'm scared.
Yeah. I know, I'm frightened now.
I'm really scared
You're
now.
scaring me, Constantine.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. We can still...
Think of it this way, though. Think of it this way. When I do an investigation, I need someone seeking an answer, someone with a sincere desire to know something. I need a label, and there's me. It's a triangle. So when people get together and I'm with them, it amplifies with other people's consciousness. So there is no time and space where consciousness is. So it doesn't matter that you're way over there and I'm over here. If we're linking in consciousness, we're linked.
Darn, I don't know.
I feel linked.
Maybe we
wonder
can,
if you should
maybe we should have
recall
back in. Yeah, we should rebuild this phone call here because the phone connection's really fading.
Can we do that?
Okay,
one?
Yeah. What I'm thinking is I'll hang up and I'll call him back.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That's
Let's
what
do
I'm
that.
doing that right
Let's see if
now.
that works.
Okay. It could just be Messenger. I don't know. I've had problems with that. I'm using Messenger.
So maybe reestablishing the connection will help.
Hello.
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, that's better. Here we go.
Yeah, we just had to refresh.
there?
Oh gosh, that's way better.
Oh, it sounds way better.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions, JP? Because I do.
Go for it. Yeah, if there's
All
more
right.
How are you doing? Are you good with our questions so far, or should we slow down? Or are we doing okay?
Oh, no, this is fine.
Oh, perfect. All right, go for it, Darren.
All right. So, like in regular life, when you're moving about and you're going to places, do you ever pick up on murders? Are you tuned in all the time, or do you have to pretty much? Have you ever gone into a house and said something bad happened here?
Yeah, it happens to me on a regular basis. For my work, I go into residential buildings all day long. And it's funny because if there's spirit activity in the house, for some reason, the people, the owners, when I'm meeting with the owners, will let me know. It's inevitable. They'll say things like, "Oh, well, we're just telling you, if you hear a bump, it's a ghost, ha 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 ha," and they'll make a joke on it. And that will allow me to say, "Oh, you think you have a ghost?" And we'll kind of ease into it. So I have done reads on houses where I've just met the people, and when I explain to them what I do, they never, ever question it. They always want me to help them every single time. It's unbelievable.
Huh.
I'm just like an old construction dog. You know what I mean? I'm a big guy. I've been in construction my whole life. I just walk in and I take care of business. So people feel comfortable with me. And when they know that I do this, no one's ever said, "Oh, that's crazy." No, don't, you know, they're always like, yeah. What do you get? And I'll walk around their house and yeah, I've had some pretty scary things. I can almost always tell if someone's died recently in the house. It's almost a given. I can pick it up right away.
Wow. Any other scary things besides death?
Well, you know, a phrase that I use that helps people kind of understand how I perceive things is people think of history as being linear, like one event happens after another event, happens after another event. But in my mind, in my experience, history is vertical. So when I stand on a spot, I sense the history in a vertical nature that's happened on that spot. So if you go into an older house, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened there. So I can pick up on things that happened in the yard, that happened up in this bedroom, that happened here, that happened there, that are happening now, that happened before. And not all of it is because an active spirit is there. It's just because I can read history. I don't know how else to describe it. I can almost always tell if a building's had a dual purpose. Like in Pennsylvania, here, it's mountainous, so a lot of the houses are crammed into small spaces in the valleys. And you go into a house, and I'll walk in, and if I'm doing an investigation, I'll say, "Well, this hasn't always been a house. This used to be this, and it was a store or it was an office." And I can pick up the dual use of a building, usually pretty easily. So that's not a spirit. That's knowledge. Here's another quote for you. Let this one sink in. And this is true. I mean, choose to believe it or not. All information is available to all people at all times. Anyone can know anything. It's always available. And that's how I do it.
So would that concept, would that be kind of like the Akashic Records kind of concept where
I guess
everything... That's interesting.
it's
and I like what you're saying about vertically aligning history. You know, just how so many things are interrelated or happened because of something, maybe not directly but indirectly because of the events of other things. So
exactly
that
right.
reminds me of the movie A Ghost Story, which all took place in one house. And they're flipping through time for the things that happened in the house. Did you ever see that by chance?
Which movie was it?
It's called A Ghost Story with Casey Affleck from 2017. He ends up dying and he's like a ghost
I'm not
in his
a movie
house.
guy.
He ends up going back and forth.
You know what's funny?
It's really interesting.
You know what's an odd thing? Is I cannot follow the emotional plot lines in movies. You think I would be all over it. I can't. I have no feeling for drama, for stories. It just, like, in 2 minutes, I'm totally bored. Like, I don't care. If it doesn't have explosions and robots or something like that, I lose interest in about 2 seconds. So I'm not a big movie guy. I don't watch television. I'm just not interested in that. It just doesn't sustain me. So if it's, I mean, I have, and I certainly did when I was younger. But if it's recent, no, I haven't seen it.
Right.
What about?
What are some, maybe, I'm sorry, Darren, but what are some of the movies maybe stick out in your mind as very memorable, or, you know, movies that may have maybe not influenced you, but just movies you really enjoyed at the time?
I don't know. The Wizard of Oz.
You go.
Nice.
I like old black and white movies where there's no or very little background music, where the pace is slow. You know what I mean? Like modern movies to me are chaotic. They're noisy. I hate that jaggedy cut camera kind of. You know, I like a slower pace, more like, you know what I mean? If you watch a movie from the 40s, there's music, but there's no quick cuts. You know, people will actually stand and have conversations. You know,
Like
and
real
that
life.
I can follow. They seem chaotic to me. So, you know, you're going to think this is silly, but I was just talking about this. And please, let's not get into politics. But one of my favorite movies is Apocalypse Now.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah, because that movie just created the feeling. I mean, I was ready to go to Vietnam when I was a young man, and that movie just captured the essence of that feeling, and it became very, very spiritual towards the end of the movie. You know, it was an interesting journey for one man and his conscious life. It wasn't just a war movie. It was much more complicated than that. But I bring that up because I was just talking about it with someone, and I said, that's my favorite movie.
Have you seen the director's cut?
I mean, probably not.
Yeah, you got to see that. Came out about 2001, but it's a lot longer. I think it's a lot better done than the original. You should see it. You'd love it.
Oh, you know something? I'll search that out. You know, when I was young, like a child young, I used to like ghost stories. You know, I used to like science fiction. Yeah, it was just a different style of communication, and it was much more similar to actual life than what you see today.
Listener discretion
Uh-oh.
is strongly advised. There is adult, mature, and possibly immature content. Well, as a matter of
We're at the
fact,
top of the hour.
fear
Yes.
out of line. Please take us to your leader.
Flagtastic.
Yeah.
That was another one of Constantine's songs.
Yeah, that kind of worked nice on radio, huh?
That was Plague.
That was
Yeah,
damn good.
that worked. That's a good little cut song. The
Oh,
intro.
yeah.
is-
I like Plague.
Yeah, you.
Huh?
So, Constantine, we've done a solid hour. We asked you a lot of questions. How you feeling? Do you want to keep going? Maybe even take some calls?
Oh, it's
from,
entirely up to you. I can talk forever.
Great question.
Oh, good.
That's
So
good.
can Wolfman.
Oh yeah.
Just let us know, and if you want to, whenever you want to
Yeah.
tap out, good with it. But we're good with keeping on.
Well, good, because, I like to do interviews because I like to put my paranormal platform out there and try to demystify things for people. So let's talk about what a spirit is. And this is my experience. First of all, the paranormal
All right.
is normal.
I think there's two kinds of spirits, but go ahead.
Well, no, you go.
Okay, I think there's it goes back to Egyptian, right? And they have the Ka and I think it's the Ba. There's two different types of spirits. One is your eternal soul, and the other one is I forget how it goes. It's what
this is
what
a convincing argument.
animates your body. One of them animates your body, and that's one is in your heart and one is in your brain. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly, but there's supposed to be two different. I'm just learning this, but I also found out that the heart does have a brain in it. There's brain matter in everyone's heart. It has a separate little brain in your heart.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't done
My
all the research on
experience-
this yet.
Yeah. Well, it's really actually quite simple. Everything is actually simple. People make it complicated. The only thing that exists is consciousness. That's all that exists. Consciousness creates reality. Reality is the plane, like the physical plane of duality. Good, evil, cold, hot. Everything is dual in nature.
I
Life-
couldn't agree more.
Is consciousness. There is no life that is not conscious. A blade of grass is conscious. And it's all the same consciousness. There's no difference. Consciousness is life. So you have a physical body. When you became alive in reality, you accepted that body. No one's here by accident in the sense that your consciousness does not arise from your body. Your body arises from your consciousness. It's just the opposite. So when your body ceases to function, your ego remains. And when you're without a body, you have to basically accept responsibility for everything that you've done while you had that body. Some people struggle with that process, and their conscious and their ego remains. And that's a spirit. Spirits are never happy people. If you're a happy, well-adjusted person who goes through the process, you give up your ego, the person that you are, you give it up. And that's the final release. And you're just conscious. And there is no identity to it.
So that's the
spirit
life
is
review.
an ego struggle. A
Would
spirit
that be
is
the
an
life
ego
review that they talk about in near-death experiences? Then, and then if you don't
say it again.
go through the life,
When
well, they say, in near-death
Well-
experiences, they say when you
I think I've never had a near-death experience, so I could be completely wrong. You know what I mean? But this is, I've developed this point of view from working with spirits. Like, I've been determined my entire professional life to figure this out. And because I don't believe that someone has to tell you what's happened. I believe every person can figure it out for themselves. You don't need a book. You don't need religion. You don't need anything. All this information is available to anyone. You just have to put your mind to it. And when you go into situations and I read it and I'm correct, I start to think, well, if I can know this, then I can figure it out. Like, if I can be verifiably correct over and over and over again and know things that I couldn't know by normal means, then I can figure it out. It just makes sense to me. People want it to be mysterious. They want the mystery. It's not mysterious at all. It's a natural process. And we all go through it. You know the term karma. Karma does not happen when you're alive. There are lots of nasty people that live very happy lives and never get punished for their nasty deeds. But they do True. When their body ceases to function. No one escapes it. All of us die, and when the body's gone, the bill comes due. So your choices in life, the bill comes due. It's like Capital One.
How many spirits are floating around? Are they rare? Are there more in
pictures
of churches or graveyards?
Man, I got all them pictures.
No. Spirits are, there is no time and space where consciousness exists. So spirits, that's how I can read remotely, because I don't have to be on the physical place to make contact with an existing spirit, because there is no time and space where they are. Graveyards, I love graveyards, but graveyards aren't haunted. People don't, when someone's in an ego struggle, they're only, the only places that they seem to haunt are places that are a part of that ego struggle. So lots of times, the place where someone dies, their home or whatever, is important to them. And it's part of that struggle. So it seems like they're still there physically, but they're really not. It's not that they're in the house. It's that the house is in their ego struggle. It's just the opposite. People talk about it.
How long? I got a question here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got pictures of, I don't know what you call them, ghosts, but it looks like ectoplasm, some stuff like that. It was in a cemetery. Do you think that, like, it's the person or your reality, like when it shows up in a picture, like what you're saying, they're everywhere. I understand that. So when they show up in a picture, does that mean it's you're bringing them there because you're there?
I haven't seen your pictures, but I've never been convinced by any photographic evidence that I've seen that it was actual evidence of a spirit in a sense. So in general, I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. But
either do I
do think that a graveyard, I don't think it's necessarily where a person continues their ego struggle, but it's a sanctified place. The ground is different. It's not like a parking lot. So it's going to produce emotions, and it's going to have a different reality to it. I love graveyards. I find them very peaceful.
So this is a little tiny graveyard. It's on a farm that my parents own the land. It's a little tiny graveyard off Lake Erie. There's a whole bunch of these little, really old ones, little tiny ones. I'm not sure what they're from, but this thing draws attention to itself. I didn't want to go
Well,
there.
there could be.
You're seeing lights come from that graveyard. We're seeing horse-drawn hearses come down the road and then disappear. All kinds of people report seeing people with 1800s clothing on walking to that graveyard and then disappearing.
That's different, though.
Okay.
Yeah, now those are events that actually happened. So that graveyard may indeed have some people's ego struggles still there. For example, in Pennsylvania, there's Gettysburg. Everybody knows Gettysburg. Well, I think there are moments in history that are so significant in terms of group consciousness that groups of people can have an ego struggle. People talk about residual as an intelligent, I don't know. I just don't get into all those definitions. There's history, there's active ego struggles, there's historical information that can be picked up by anyone. But I don't think graveyards are necessarily particularly haunted because I just don't think the grave is important to most people. That's not where their struggle is. Their struggle is with their family. Their struggle is with someone they murdered or something like that. You know what I mean?
What about a battlefield, like a Civil War battlefield?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's so the emotional and consciousness experience was so intense that I think it's capable that there's a group consciousness, a group ego struggle which remains. So I do think you can go on to Go ahead.
Have you been to a battlefield or like Ground Zero or any place like that where you really, had an experience?
Yes and no. Being in Pennsylvania, I've been on a lot of properties where the feeling I get immediately is there was bloodshed on this property. So there are lots of Native American colonist skirmishes and battles that happened that some are documented, some are not. But yeah, I can pick that up. I'm actually afraid to go to Gettysburg. You talk about being overwhelmed. I'm afraid that I would just get overwhelmed there.
I could see that.
Yeah, and it's actually within a reasonable drive for me. And people say, "Oh, why don't you go to Gettysburg?" I'd want to have somebody with me. I would probably get overwhelmed just thinking about it, in a sense. But I've got to do it. I've got to go there.
Let's do it right now. Do it on a live stream. That'd be fun.
Yeah, Native Americans, they're very interesting because a lot of properties I go on, I pick up on Native American presence. And I think they had a very different perspective on life and death. And in terms of spirits, they've been, of all the spirits that have remained, they've been both ends of the spectrum. They've been some of the most noble, intelligent, conscious people in the spirit form that I've ever come across. But they've also been the opposite end. They've been some of the most disturbed, psychotic killers that I've ever experienced. And my feeling has always been that on the negative side, they don't mind being trapped. It's kind of weird. Like they don't expect to resolve. They'll stick around to torture people. Some people are that nasty, and that's not just Native Americans. They stick around just to continue to inflict pain on the living.
I
They're
hate people
psychotic.
like that. And spirits like that.
What?
How long
Yeah.
can a spirit stay there doing that? Hundreds of years? Thousands?
Well,
Have
you
you
know,
picked up on a spirit
of
that's old?
think of that, though. Now, that's an interesting question because if mediums, and I'm not knocking anyone in particular, but in general, they will, look at a person,
Yeah,
they'll say,
enlarges.
"I see your aunt and your grandmother's still here," and I don't think it works like that. And the reason is the world would be inundated with spirits if people didn't resolve. You'd have spirits from thousands of years ago. It doesn't work like that. People resolve. And if you don't resolve, that's what hell is. There is no physical hell and there's no physical heaven. Hell is you're so stubborn not to resolve, you're just sucked into this void of meaningless existence that you become trapped in. So people resolve. And some people resolve immediately. Some people, maybe 2 months. It depends. There's no time where they are. So one of the things that I can do is, for some reason, I think one of the reasons I have this ability is spirits can see me. They can't see everybody. For some reason, they can see me. So they know when I'm coming. Sense me. Yeah, I use the term see. They become conscious of me. And sometimes, just them becoming conscious of me, I'm like a mirror. And they become aware of the bind that they're in, and they'll resolve right in front of me, type of thing.
Oh, cool.
They just need to they just need to understand. Lots of times a spirit will remain because there's this grievance that they have, and they just have to get their word out. They just have to let someone know. And when they realize that I understand and I heard them, they just resolve. Their deed is done.
Does that feel good when that happens?
Oh, yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
I would think that would be like an addictive thing that you'd feel good about.
Well, it is. I love to work. I would do this every day. I mean, it's tiring. Lots of times I'm just physically tired after. It's weird. There's like a hangover effect.
Well, that does raise
it never.
A question. I'm just real quick to add into what you're saying now. How much work do you get? How often are you getting assigned to these sort of things? And is it something you can do all year round, or do you do it?
Yeah. How long does it take to recover?
I'm just
usually the next day. Like, we'll do this investigation on the 19th. And we always work on Sundays because it's just when people's schedule allow us. And we'll work into the night. We usually start towards the end of the day. And we'll go as long as it seems. It's funny. When we go do an investigation, there'll be an active period. And it always seems to kind of peter out after a while. And you can feel it. And we'll just look at each other and go, "Oh, yeah, we're done." And we'll just pack up and leave. And the next day, I'll be in a funk. I'll just be in a funk the next day. I go through it's kind of erratic.
Like a mental?
I mean, I'll have. Yeah, it's
like
hard
depression?
to describe.
Or physical
it's
exhaustion?
Kind of like a hangover. Yeah, it's kind of like an emotional exhaustion. And because some of the times the cases, they're not happy. You're not dealing with happy people. Lots of times you're dealing with sick, perverted people who are trapped in their evilness after their body stops. I mean, I've come across, I don't believe in demons. Behind every demon, I've always found is a psychotic person. And when you deal with that, it's tiring. You just is like, ugh.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
about-
there are,
what about-
paranormal community, you have demonologists and everything, I don't know. I'm just not into it. I just don't think it works like that. That's never been my experience. And in terms
What
of
about
work,
people?
I was just going to say, it comes and goes. Like sometimes I'll have 3 cases running at once, and they're all remote. I get a lot of remote work. Well, someone will contact me and say, "Can you help me with this?" I've got a paranormal team in England that I work with. So they'll be doing an investigation. They'll pull me in, and so it kind of comes and goes.
What about people that are alive? Can you sense when someone's sick or has cancer, or can you heal people?
I haven't. I don't know if I can heal people. Honestly, I've never tried. I don't think. Lots of times when someone tells me they're ill, I look at them and I see a life not lived well. And so I think my perception of illness is different than the average person. And I have empathy for that. Someone who's literally led a life that made them sick. But actually, this didn't end well, but I had one client recently who was mentally ill. Diagnosed mentally ill on heavy medication, Thorazine, heavy medication. And she constantly heard voices in her head. And she was convinced that there were separate consciousness from her own, and that they were demonic, and she wanted me to help. And I said, I'll tell you, if I feel there's a paranormal element to this, I'll tell you. But if I feel there's not a paranormal element to it, I will tell you that too. And I worked with this person for over a year.
Oh boy!
There were paranormal issues. There were, but I had to convince her that the voices in her head were not separate consciousnesses. They weren't separate entities. It was her mental illness that were causing that, and that was a long, very slow process. You talk about ethics. I thought long and hard about working with this person. I thought I have to be very cautious because I can really screw somebody up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at earlier. Is there must be situations where you really have to consider who you're working with, what you're working with. Otherwise, it could be detrimental instead of helpful. So that's a really good.
It is.
I like how that panned out for you. And not every case is going to be a slam dunk win.
Well, yeah, no, this one didn't end well. I had to block her because I don't mean to be callous, but after a long period of normal conversation, this isn't the right phrase. She went off the deep end, and she became infatuated with me. And I kept on saying, "Please, you're a client. Don't go there." And it just got so, difficult. I just had to cut it. I warned her. I said, "If you continue, I'm just going to stop, and we're never going to talk again." And that happened. I was on one investigation where there was a young woman, a teenager, a girl, who they were having experiences in the house, and she, like a typical TV show, she constantly felt like she was being watched. And when I met with these people, her father's there, and her parents, and I said, I'm just going to tell it like it is. So this isn't always pretty. Just be prepared. And there was a spirit there, a very difficult spirit that had lived in the home before. The guy was a pervert, and he did watch her. And, I'm talking and I'm saying, he stands and he watches you in the shower. And if I hadn't have prepared them to receive this type of information, I would have just made it even worse for her. So I'm really good at explaining to people how they need to take control, and that person's dead, and they really can't do anything. And you have to tell them, you're dead. Leave me alone. You have to tell them that. And if you don't, they won't leave you alone.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So it's sometimes, and particularly when you have perverted, and many spirits were perverts in life, and I don't know how else to say it, but they weren't good people. That's why they're stuck, because they can't admit their guilt. They can't take responsibility.
How much of it is sexual? It seems like there's a lot of sexual perversion versus just pure evil,
Well, it's one of the things that is part of human existence. And it has, yes, it's physical, but it has deeply emotional content with it, always. There almost really isn't anything, in my mind, like casual sex. It just isn't. It's deeply emotional for all people. So it influences a lot of ego struggles. It's a part of it. Not all, but it's like murder. It's you're never going to escape that.
Why would
you're never going to escape that
and not say anything?
What's that?
Wolfman, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was. Never mind that. I was
Who
just
you talking to?
I was talking to Chris. I was asking her why it's Darth Shadows in our chat, voice chat, and then he mutes his, so he can't hear anything, and he can't talk and he can't hear. He must be listening on Spreaker or whoever it is. I think that may be Joe. I'm not sure. I don't know who it is.
It's 8:30.
Do you have listeners that have questions?
Oh, we got listeners.
I think. Oh yeah,
and there's I got 4 different chat rooms going here.
That's
I think
the king.
6. I got
That's
6
the king.
different. Yeah.
That's the king. He's cool.
All right, cool. All right.
Okay, why don't we?
I just wonder why a person would go in there and then not only mute their microphone but mute their headphone too.
I don't know. Maybe he's eating.
Or walked away from the computer. Yeah, that's true.
He just wants us to know that he's not there.
Okay,
the
yeah.
Dream Master's out there, and so is the Lioness.
Where? There's nobody in the drawbridge.
I keep telling them.
Okay, well.
I don't know if they're listening.
I think they know how it works. Don't worry about it.
Okay. There. This is Nick.
Well, for anybody else listening,
Constantine, this is Nick.
There could be people listening on Spreaker. If you want to get in, you got to go in the drawbridge, and then we pull you in here.
Nick's a part of all our shows. He's got cerebral palsy, and he loves listening and being part of it.
And then we're we're inside the castle. If you go on my Discord, I got 3 different voice chat rooms.
I saw that.
So the dungeon is where I throw you if you're being belligerent or whatever for any reason. And then you can't get back inside the castle, but you can still chat in the dungeon with other people if if you want to.
Got it.
But the people that go in the drawbridge, then I usually pull them inside the castle, and that way we can control and moderate who's on the air.
Got it.
Yeah. It works pretty good. But for some reason, Lioness can't get in. I don't know why that is. I can't figure out why that is right now. Anyway, there's still I got questions from the chat here.
Sure. Yeah.
What are you? Here's from Marijuana Mama in Spreaker chat. What are your feelings on people who repeatedly are attempted to be murdered? Who have had repeated attempted murders upon themselves, upon their person. I think she's trying to say.
Hold on. So somebody was actually being attacked.
Yeah, what are your feelings about people that have been? People have tried to kill them a couple times. I don't know. You guess you'd have to know somebody that's had their life. Someone tried to kill them a couple times.
Yeah, I mean that's hard to answer. But
it's hard to ask.
My first answer would be you might not be making good decisions. Oh, there you go. Say that again.
Yeah.
I just heard a woman's voice.
Oh, she said it happened 12 times that someone tried to kill her.
Wow. I'll just throw in my 2 cents before we hear Constantine's answer. But I've worked with people who have, I worked in grief therapy for a while, and there are people that, I mean, it's strange to say it, but they were strangely attached or attracted to. They had people in their lives who were murdered, attempted murders committed on them. It's very strange, but I've come across it 2 times, and it just seemed almost every year someone very close to them was dying in these strange, unnatural ways. And so I'm wondering, that's a good question by Marijuana Mama. I'm wondering if you've come across anything like this in your line of
Yeah, do we bring it on ourselves? Or can you protect yourself in any way?
Well, I think first of all, life is random. So random shit happens to people all the time. And it's like cancer clusters. Some people are just unlucky and stuff happens to them at a disproportionate rate. But I also think that you lay the foundation for your experiences by your actions throughout your life. And I think there could be a connection. But there's a house near me that when I first moved to Pennsylvania, I rented an apartment in it. And this is an old house. And there's a family that lives there that owns it. And they have had a rash of people die. That, for example, within a few months, 2 of their I would say friends. They're more than acquaintances. They're not necessarily close acquaintances, but they're not distant people. 2 of them fell off cliffs and died. Car accident, suicide in jail, heart attack, all surrounding this property, people connected with this property. The previous owner of the property was struck by lightning and killed. I do think some people create almost like a wake, like a boat wake, by their behavior that just causes this chaos in their life, which produces negative results. You can't necessarily say it. You can't necessarily blame it on them. But if you lived in a cabin in the woods and never saw anybody, it's unlikely that people are going to try and seek you out and kill you. But
yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah. But you might be surprised. There's probably some weirdo that would bump into your cabin and try to stab you. You know, you never know. So I'm not sure I can answer that. I think, you know, once again, people talk about karma and positivity and all this kind of stuff. And I think you have some control, but I really don't think people have quite as much control over what happens as they think in a specific sense. But I do think that some people just churn up this big weight of, you know, whether you screw people over and over again or you just make bad decisions, and if you just do it all the time, it's not going to produce good results. And that's not karma. That's just the nature of life. You hang out with bad people, bad shit happens. You know what I mean? Like if you're involved in drugs, there's virtually never a positive outcome. And I don't mean smoking pot. I mean, if your life is filled with people who do drugs and heavy drugs and their life is about to, you know, bad shit happens. People OD, people steal, people, you know, it's just, you reap what you sow to some degree. But, you know, I don't want to say anything specific about the caller because I don't know her. It's hard to answer that question. But I would be worried if someone tried to kill me 12 times. I'd be concerned.
Sure. Oh, yeah. That is scary. And
there are houses. There are certain houses where there's just this underlay of tragedy.
There he goes.
There he got the call got screwed up again.
You're in the can again. It's weird.
What,
you there?
It just changed again?
Yeah, you're kind of in the background. Hey, Wolfman, can you play another one of his songs and then connect with him?
Wolfman, you there?
Oh, of course, yeah.
He must be taking a break.
Yeah, I can do that.
He's in the he's like in the background again.
Okay.
That's so weird. He predicted it too. He said we're gonna have sound trouble when I'm on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He told us this last night.
Yes.
All right.
Hey, you gonna call him back, Wolfman?
Yeah, man. I'll call him right back.
He'll call you back.
Okay.
All right.
Lady Esmond said, Wolfman, are you there?
Wolfman's here. And I got the guest. Hello, are you there? Is there anybody home?
Hey.
How you doing?
Does that sound better?
Yeah, it sounds much better. Much better. Much better.
Yeah, I was doing an interview one time where a spirit connected with the guy interviewing me jumped in, and we were having lots of difficulties, and these people kind of got creeped out, and I ended up doing like a reading on this spirit that couldn't reach the host but could reach me to communicate with the host, and it ended up being very specific. It was his neighbor, yeah. But I tell you what,
like
the interview
Ouija
after
board.
that, huh?
It's almost like a Ouija board.
It was
No.
this spirit needed resolution, and once again, they can see me. They can become conscious of me. So when I made the link with the interviewer, the spirit became conscious of me, and I started getting information from him, and it required specific action from the interviewer. And the interview just kind of fell apart after that because the guy really creeped out.
It turned into a seance.
Yeah, I don't like those words. I'm not into Ouija boards.
Yeah.
I'm really not. No, I
don't blame
I
you.
just don't see anything positive come of them. I really don't.
Well, not if spirits are what you say they are. Who wants to talk to them? You're not going to help them. I don't know. I guess you might be able to help them with a Ouija board.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people get random information. Like, for example, there was an event, a paranormal event where they had different people come in. It was at this building, and they had vendors and that kind of thing. And a paranormal team was conducting a public ghost hunt, and I'm really not a big fan of those. Where a bunch of people come along and they try to get EVPs. I don't know, it's just weird. I've never done them, I'm not interested. But this one, I happened to be there, and it was happening. And they had a spirit box. And they were down in the basement, and there's like 15 people, sitting on the floor asking questions. And I walk in just randomly because people are just walking around all over the place. I walked in, and the spirit box goes, Constantine. And I looked at the person.
No way.
Yeah, it was too good to be true. And I immediately thought, it's phony. I'm telling you right now, it's phony. This is rigged. And I looked at the person whose device it was, and I noticed that the person they came with was on a laptop computer, like not sitting with them, off to the side. And, so devices, I don't know. I thought it was rigged. I just don't think that a spirit would just, people get a lot of voices and EVPs, and I don't know. I question a lot of them. I really do. I don't have an exact explanation for it, but I don't use them as proof of anything, like a Ouija board. I don't use it as proof of anything. I don't think it's reliable information.
Right.
I think I'm more reliable, honestly.
Do you think the spirits are kind of in a state of confusion
Sometimes,
most of the time, or are they?
No, it's
sometimes or most of the
time.
Yeah.
It's just like people. If you're mentally ill in life, you'll be mentally ill in death. So sometimes spirits are fragmented. They're literally broken up into little psychotic pieces. Sometimes they're totally clear and just as sane as you or I, or you or me. You know what I mean? It's there is no generalization you can make about a spirit because they're just people. They're actual people. It's not,
Well,
a magic thing.
what about when the spirit gets reunited with the other part and goes back to the source or whatever? Are they still mentally disabled, or are we great spiritual beings like I've heard before?
Well, the fractured pieces are the ego. That's not the consciousness. That's
Right.
the personality. So I've never been able to put them back together, but I have been able to help them resolve a little bit. One thing I will tell you is any experience you have, any sound, any movement, any visual, it's always communication. Always. It's never random. Like, you don't just happen to hear something or happen to see something. The spirit is communicating with you. It wants you to see it. It wants you to hear it. So people, if there's banging sounds, people get terrified. Most of the time, those sounds are the spirit simply trying to get your attention. Like, listen to me. Pay attention to me. It's always communication. Sometimes the intent is not good, but sometimes it's interpreted as being not good when actually it's just another human trying to reach another human.
Yeah. Have you ever run into a spirit that was committed suicide?
Oh yeah, suicide is always a tragedy. It's very common that a person will remain unresolved after suicide. Suicide never solves the person's problem. It never does. The pain just continues after they don't have a body. And that's the tragedy of suicide. Once again, suicide, drugs, abuse, all the human tragic emotions are typically what cause people to remain. Sometimes if a person is deeply attached to their property, sometimes they'll remain. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. Like if they struggled so hard their whole life and their property was their pride and joy, and it was a part of their ego, a deep part of their ego, sometimes they will remain attached. But typically, they figure out that they're dead and that the property is actually meaningless, and they resolve.
They let go of the big screen TV.
Yeah. But it could be money.
Have you ever?
It could be money. It could be money. People, greed. All the human struggle is what remains after the body ceases. So if you're happy and you resolve quickly. And that's what peace is. Peace is the ultimate goal. And that happens when you give up your personality. I apologize.
It's like
What's your name?
Repaint.
Ask me the question. Huh?
Oh, I'm Darren. Darren.
So Darren,
yes.
When Darren dies, Darren has to stop being Darren. And you have to say goodbye to Darren. And that's difficult.
Yeah.
But once you've said goodbye to Darren, all that exists is consciousness, and that's perfect. There is no struggle.
When you witness people resolving, do you get to see them ascend or anything, or you just know that it happened by feel?
It's by feel. Yeah, there is no time and space, so you don't go anywhere. There is no up down tunnels. There's none of that. It's just.
Do you ever see anything? Do you ever see little orbs or any?
Well, it's funny. I've never seen a visual spirit. And I think the reason for that is because they don't need to show themselves to me because I'm already aware of them consciously. I literally think that once that consciousness is made, they don't have to manifest to me. But my team did have this. We've got a couple of videos where, I'm doing my thing. And there's one in particular where I'm focused on this female spirit, and I say, she's right behind me. And clear as day on the video, you see an orb come from the other room, come in right behind me and go into the back of my head.
Yes.
Just like goes to the back of my head. And I knew when that happened. I said it. So I didn't see it, but I knew it in my head, and I have images in my head, but they saw it visually, and we had it on video.
Neat.
Yeah.
You ever think about making a living doing this kind of stuff versus your regular job?
I can't. That's one of the things I said, yesterday. I have a couple of superstitions, and one of them is I can never take money for it. I just have this feeling that if I try to make a transaction out of this, I'm going to lose my ability to do it. I don't know if that's true or not. I just have this feeling that, like, I promote myself, like doing interviews, because I like to help share my understanding of it. But I also do it because it often leads to new work. And I love to work. So I promote myself from that. But no, people, I could write a book in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not into it. I don't want money to ever be a part of it. I make my money another way.
Well, you could always donate the money from the book to charity.
No, it can't be a transaction. I can't, like, if somebody wants me to travel, and I say, well, you need to pay my expenses, but I can't book the hotel. They have to book the hotel. Yeah, I'm just weird like that.
So,
like, I can't have money become involved.
Can you give us a good story from when you went and visited, like, a haunted house versus, like, the police bringing you in?
Yeah. Oh, I got a lot of them, but, I'll tell you this first one. It was the first pivotal experience I had, and it's really telling. It explains a lot of things. I was about maybe 29, 30 years old. I had been with my wife for many years already, and I was friends with her brother. So my wife and I and my brother and her brother and his wife, we used to socialize a lot. So they had just bought a new house, and when they bought the house, it was an elderly couple, and it was a relatively new house built in the 50s. And they were living outside in a trailer. And they said, "Why are you living in the trailer?" I said, "Well, we're moving to Florida, and we wanted to practice living in the trailer to see if we
fucking
liked it."
weird, man.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec, Constantine. There, you're back. We lost you there for a second. You're back.
I'm okay.
Keep talking.
Yeah.
You're okay.
It's flanging. It's flanging. You hear that flanging effect?
No, I don't hear anything.
We can. Oh, you sound fine now.
It's phasing and flanging.
Good.
It's modulating.
Yeah, this is
it's right when we're in a good story, and it's like, it's so frustrating.
Right when you started your story, of course.
Oh, it's always at the best part when it does that. That's what I'm noticing.
Yeah, it's because I'm going into the zone in my head, just talking about it.
Yeah.
And
that's what it is.
It actually starts phasing in and out. It's what's that name?
It's exactly right. It's when he's like mentally putting himself in a place.
No, it's
Right.
it's
Times
going
now.
to
Yeah.
it's
Right when you
it's like a
focus in on
musical
what you're gonna tell us.
instrument when I put a flanger or a phaser on my guitar. That's what it's doing.
It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
It's uncanny.
That's pretty wild, man. It's freaky. Well, you're a musician, you know. You're
We can still hear him.
creating.
Let's let him finish this.
You're creating your own effects on your voice.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, let me tell the story because it's a good one, and then we'll wrap it up because
Okay.
my voice is good.
Okay.
So they're living in this trailer, and they said that we're moving to Florida, and we wanted to see if we liked living in the trailer. So seemed like a reasonable thing. They left all their furniture and bolted. So my brother-in-law I'm from Rhode Island. He's an Italian guy, contractor, not a flighty person. One night, we stayed over. And we stayed over in a back bedroom. It was like a ranch house that had 2 twin beds in it because they had left all their furniture there. In the middle of the night, I wake up, and there's this rapping in the ceiling above me. And it wasn't frightening. I thought it was plumbing. I thought it was pipes. And I went, wow, that's crazy.
Sure.
Those are some loud pipes. And I just went back to sleep. The next morning, we get up, and I said, boy, you got some loud plumbing in here. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, no, in the middle of the night, there was this banging in the ceiling. And his wife, breaks down in tears. She goes, it's not the plumbing. The house is haunted. I hate it. We're going to get out of here. So they experienced like something you'd see in a movie. The banging was getting so loud.
That kicked right in. We're at the bottom of the hour.
Hold on.
We're at the top of the hour. Monster Capsule
Okay.
Radio.
Let him finish his story. 'Cause he
I'm gonna
wants to
let.
go. His
I'm gonna
voice is
fade that. I'm
cracking.
gonna let you finish your story. We'll postpone that.
Oh,
I'll
it's
tighten it up.
killing me.
I'll tighten it up.
No, don't tighten it up. It's
That's
okay.
okay. No, it's
We're
okay. I didn't
We
have
got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so they experienced things that you would see on in a horror movie, like banging so loud. He said it would sound like somebody hitting the side of the house with a sledgehammer.
Right.
Furniture move, doorknobs turn, the thermostats would go up and down. Now, we hadn't experienced this yet, but they were telling me, and they weren't lying. They were hysterical. His wife they just bought the house, and she said, we're going to sell it. I can't live here. So one night, we're over socializing, having a couple of beers, and I hear this bang from the basement. It was like a whoomp. It was not bang. It's a unique sound. I said, what the hell was that? He goes, that's one of the sounds. I said, no, that's your furnace backfiring. He goes, it's not. I've had my furnace checked out. That's what we hear. So my wife said, that's it. We're leaving. I'm never coming back here again. And so we went home, and we got into bed, and just before I fall asleep, you're kind of in that relaxation phase, bang, right in my face is the spirit. I mean, it is like nose to nose with me. I knew everything. I knew his whole story. He was black. He was a freed slave, and he had been falsely accused of raping a white girl and was hunted down and lynched. And he was now I'm from New England, so there were freed slaves that owned businesses and were, he was a merchant. He was an accepted member of society. He was cultured, he had a family, he had a business, and he was falsely accused. They lynched him. So I went, wow, how the fuck does that work? What's this all about? So I went back and I told him, I said, I know what's going on. I said, and I explained it to them. And my brother-in-law said, that just before I was visiting with him, like say the week before, he's kind of an insomniac, and he would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and take the dog for a walk and go fishing, that kind of stuff. So he'd gotten up and he went outside, and he said there was this ball of light, and he followed it down this path. And it's in the middle of the night with his dog. The dog was chasing it. And it led him to this small graveyard, a colonial graveyard. But in Rhode Island, a historical graveyard, they're all marked, they're fenced off. This was not. And he says, so I knew this guy's name. I said, his name's Albert Johnson. And so he says, I got to show you this. He took me to this graveyard, and there were some carved formal headstones, like normal colonial type headstones.
Yeah.
And then off to the side, there was a rough slab of like slate with the name Albert Johnson etched into it, like hand etched.
That was him.
How does that work? So I knew what happened. I knew his name, and we identified a gravestone with his name on it within maybe 1,000 feet of the house. His whole thing was he had to tell people he was innocent. So all the banging, everything that was done was not to frighten people. He was desperate. He was...
It was like frustration.
Beside himself. Frustration, fear, anger, everything. He couldn't believe it that this happened to him. And he had to have his story told. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. And that's legitimate. It happened exactly as I said it did. My family, my mother's maiden name is Yaw, Y-E-A-W. It's a very unusual name. It predates the English language. This house was in the town of Scituate in Rhode Island, and my ancestors were some of the original inhabitants of Scituate. And it occurred to me later that he knew me. He knew my ancestors, and that's why he came to me.
Wow.
So at that point, I had this. That's when I said, I've got to figure this out. I've got to understand how this works. He saw me. He saw me specifically. He picked me out to tell me his story. But then I thought, oh my God, I wonder if my relatives did this to him. I didn't get that feeling. I just think that he recognized my lineage because he didn't appear to anybody else. And for me to actually know his name, I've never had an experience
Before.
like that since.
Yeah.
And that's
I get
what
names.
really,
I get names once in a while. Freaks people right out.
I get names occasionally. I just had one the other day, but I'm not really. I'm a little bit shaky on names. But to have him have a figure tell me their name directly, in the sense of I knew his name when I saw his face, that was very unusual. It was the most intense paranormal experience I've ever had, and that's got me really pursuing this whole thing because I had to figure out how this worked.
Was there a historical record of him?
You know,
could find out about?
I attempted to search it, and I could not validate it other than the hand-scrawled name on the headstone.
Wow.
I couldn't document it. It was from very early. It was from the early 1700s type of thing. So I wasn't able to. I just did a read the other day, well, not the other day, a couple of months ago, where I was at that paranormal event, as a matter of fact, and a team was there, and they said, you know, we have one of our clients with us, and we'd really like to talk to her. Would you mind talking to her? And I said, no, but, you know, usually, I don't know, I'm kind of at an event. I usually, I'm not a medium, you know what I mean? I just was hesitant. And we're in a crowd of people. We sat down, and I just started talking to her a little bit, and she started saying things, and I said, "Who's Henry?" And she goes, "I don't know Henry. I don't know a Henry." And I said, "Henry's a smoker." She goes, "Oh my God, I smell cigarette smoke all the time. That's one of the things that is happening in my house." And I said, "Henry is kind of a comic. He's like a funny guy. And I see children around him. Like I see him leaning up against the counter, smoking a cigarette, joking around, and they're kids, and they think it's funny." And I said, "Yeah, but there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the kids. It doesn't feel right." And then I said, "Oh my God, I think Henry killed a child." And as I sat with it a little bit more, I said, I think this child died in a farm accident. Henry was responsible for. I mean, I was very specific. And, this woman knows nothing of it. It's not making any sense. Well, the team went back and did their investigation, continued their investigation of the property, and they went back into the historical record, and they identified him specifically. Henry was the original landowner, and he built the foundation of the house that they lived in currently. He was known by the previous owners, like there are several owners previous to the current owners, as Uncle Henry, and all the kids loved him. And one day he was supposed to be watching his daughter, and he lost track of her. He was working in the foundation. She went out into the fields and was killed by a tractor. And that was a historical record produced by someone else. And
Right.
They called me back and they said, "Oh my God, you were 100% accurate." And that's unusual.
Wow.
I usually don't get a name like that so clear. But it surprises me every time I do it. Like, it's not like I'm 100% confident. I'm never really 100%. And then
Right.
it comes back and it validates. And I go, whoa, I did it again. I'm still surprised by it. Okay, we good?
Have you?
Yeah, man. Thanks for that. That was
Yeah, it's like you're losing your voice.
I am.
Unless you want to go get a nightcap and come back.
I got something to add to that. Jewish producer.
Sure.
Remember that night? I was doing the tarot reading, and I guessed, what was it? I guessed your girlfriend's name.
Oh yeah.
That was basically the same. I don't usually get names either, but
Yeah.
that was a good example.
No, you got that. You need. That was great.
And I've had
Yeah,
a lot of
everything
people
happens.
and most of the time, if I get something, I say it, and boom, I'm dead on too. So, but I don't say nothing
you
if I
learn
don't
to-
get it right.
You learn to recognize what's pertinent, I think. That's one of the skills of the ability. And, because a lot of stuff pops into your head. But certain pieces just seem a little more relevant. And you learn to sense which is the important stuff. So, with me, and I know this sounds cocky, but it's true. I'm really, most of the time, the vast majority of time, I'm accurate. I produce verifiable, accurate information. And that's why I can work with law enforcement. They don't fool around. You don't go in and blow it the first time and then come back. You either produce or they don't ask you back. Yeah, so it's funny how you can sense what is valid. And that comes with practice. It really does. It gets better with practice.
Amazing stories. And I liked what you said earlier, that you're rooted in nature. I think that probably had a lot to do with your time over there in Rhode Island. A state firmly rooted in nature and surrounded by beautiful surroundings. So I'm wondering, I was just thinking on what I do for a living is sort of like, the twin brother to what, or maybe a dichotomous connection to what you do. I'm just on the other side of things, and what you say about not accepting any transactions, an important part of because on my end of things, in order for me to actually bill and get paid for what I do, we have to follow such rigid guidelines, and in my opinion, we're not even because of these guidelines. It makes it very difficult to solve a lot of more esoteric concerns or occulted concerns like the things that you deal with. I'm just wondering, had you ever looked at it from that perspective? Because I find it really interesting because for me, I'm so limited in areas like this where I can go and make certain discoveries.
Of hatred without accountability.
What are we talking about?
It's in every community. I realized it was crazy. A lot of beef in the
mute.
Oh,
sorry. Dream Master was waiting in the.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah, so I can.
Sorry,
I didn't hear that. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, good.
I think when you say rooted in nature, I believe that you can clearly understand the nature of reality by observing the natural world, how animals operate. Animals are conscious exactly the way you are. They want all life eats. It has to eat something. All life reproduces. They have families. And all life seeks a beneficial environment. They build shelters. So there's no difference between an ant eating, reproducing, and building an ant mound than a person. We do the exact same things. When a bird eats something, it goes, "Oh my God, that was good," just the way you do. The consciousness is exactly the same. So I think you can understand the nature of reality just by observing reality and observing reality outside of the human experience. So the point of that is, I think the ultimate good can only be done on a person-to-person basis. It can't be done through government. It can't be done through charity. It can only be done by one person interacting with another person. So that's how I try to keep it. I try to keep it direct and very personal. It's not uncommon. I did this one investigation. This was with police, and it was a cold case, and it was approved by an attorney general here in Pennsylvania to bring me in because they actually had to budget detectives' time for it. It was a young man who was shot and killed in the woods in this game land area in Pennsylvania. And they took me to meet with his mother. And as soon as the mother and I came in contact, we both just started to sob. I mean, I break down in tears frequently when I work. I just become overwhelmed with someone else's emotional state. Sometimes it's the spirit, sometimes it's the person. But the connection, she knew that I knew, and I knew what she knew. And she had feelings about this. This was her son, her only son, who got murdered. And she was convinced, she was really happy that they brought me in because she had her own feelings that she wanted to share with somebody who understood. So I think that you're a practicing professional, and, you know, life is life. You're going to be, it's a business, you're going to be restricted, but ultimately, your highest and best purpose is going to be to connect with a person directly. And that's all there is in life. Everything else is a distraction. Money,
Very rewarding.
work, they're all distractions.
Yeah.
When
Good point.
your body ceases to function, they're meaningless. You won't care what your bank account was.
Happiness is from helping others.
It's, you know, I really feel like my purpose, if you have a purpose in life, I really feel my purpose is to serve. That sounds kind of corny, but I really feel it is. I feel every person's role is to serve every other conscious being. You know, bacteria are conscious. When you get in, you think, oh my God, that's horrible, we have to kill it. But the bacteria going, oh boy, this is great, look at all this food, boy, this is a perfect place. It's a victory for them. And that's the way life is. We all eat each other. Everything's other life. No life eats rocks. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe there's some bacteria that eats iron or something like that. But basically, we all consume each other.
The iron is conscious.
No, only life is conscious.
What
And
about
all life is
crystals?
conscious.
What about crystals? Can crystals be conscious? They can hold a lot of.
You know,
They can hold a lot of
I
data.
don't know. You know.
Can a computer become
You know,
conscious?
No.
Do you think AI could
Never.
ever be conscious?
I
No,
think that
never.
crystals and rocks are the lowest form of being, but I do think that they do have an essence to them, and a power. You know?
Well, but that's not necessarily consciousness. Only life is conscious. So a crystal might have some amazing capacities or properties or, you know, I mean, people just go over the top. You know, you go to these paranormal events and people are selling different crystals and they say, well, this one does this. And, you know, I don't know. I'm just not into it. I don't think you need any
Neither
of
am
it.
I.
You know,
I don't know. I'm thinking about more scientifically. They found out that quartz crystal can store a lot of data, right? Just as much as a human mind, possibly, or something.
Well, that would be true,
and
but
then I
that's
heard
not
stories
conscious.
about the archons and how that they live on other planets in our solar system, and they're some kind of a crystal that's sentient.
Lioness says they are part of the planet and it's alive. Just
Yeah,
in
and
the
some
same
people believe
way
the Earth is sentient, and the Sun is sentient, and the center of our
I
solar
disagree.
system is sentient.
I disagree. I think that reality is a creation of consciousness. Consciousness is not energy. Consciousness is before energy. It'll never be proven. It'll never be validated because you can't use reality to validate consciousness. Consciousness created it. So, of course, consciousness is, in a sense, in everything, but only life. Life is the expression of consciousness, life itself. Reality is in a constant state of decay. Only life creates itself. And that's where consciousness comes in. We're in the plane of duality. And that's the conscious functioning in an unconscious, unalive space. You know, everybody's trying to prove paranormal. They're always trying to prove it. And to me, it's like, I don't have to prove it.
I would like to know for 100% that I'm going somewhere after I die. Are you there?
You're not going anywhere. You're not. There is nowhere to go.
Can I stay? Can I be in existence still? Are you 100% sure that we... I wish I was there. How do I get there?
Practice, baby, practice.
How do I practice? Specifically.
How do I get to Carnegie Hall?
Yes, please.
I would say that a good way to pursue it is to try and cultivate your intuition.
Whoa.
Really try and cultivate it. And
may have to calm down.
Try to do what I do.
It does. It comes back in by itself too, though. Strangely enough.
Go to a place and try and sense what you might get. You know what I mean? Go out to nature by yourself. Sit down away from everything and just sit and be quiet and realize that the trees know you're there. Trees are conscious. Trees talk to each other. That's been proven. They communicate their roots to each other. And just think about it. And you'll feel it. You'll leave a different person.
I'll try.
It sounds to me like a lot of your philosophies would match up with a lot of Aboriginal beliefs. And there's something called the Aboriginal dream time. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I hear a lot of what you're saying, part of their philosophy. It's pretty interesting to hear the connection.
If I had to say, if I had to choose a spiritual belief system, it would be probably Buddhism. But I don't mean contemporary Buddhism where there are temples and they're burning candles. I mean the Buddha's pursuit of the understanding of the nature of reality without any contraption. Any religious belief, any belief is something you adopt. It's like you put it on like a coat. So someone says, I'm Christian. Well, what does that mean? Someone taught them what that means, and they decide to believe that. Consciousness is outside of all that. Has nothing to do with any of that. That's all created by men, by people. And some of it's good. If you need a strict religious belief to help you control the anxiety of being alive and function, then it's a good thing. Because being alive produces anxiety. Animals have anxiety. Animals, they don't want to be eaten.
No.
They, you know what I mean? It's just being alive produces anxiety. So if there's something, a belief system that helps you function, then it's a good thing. But you don't need it to understand consciousness. Anything that can be understood by anyone with no one's help. Why would you have to talk to another person to understand the nature of reality? You're in it.
Yeah. No, that's
No.
You're right.
There are. I mean,
I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, people. I mean, I didn't invent all this. Obviously, I've read things and I've done things, so people help you. But you come to realize that it's available to anybody. You don't have there's no book, there's no magic words, there's no ceremonies. Those are all invented by humans.
It's like we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, totally overcomplicated.
Yeah.
It's completely simple.
Well, also
people love
I think
I'm sorry. People love drama.
They do. They love drama. But I also
I don't like drama.
There's been a tendency with the whole technological revolution to really separate, I think, mankind's connection with nature, and they're two very, different aspects of life. And I think more people now than ever are in conflict with how to proceed. Do you agree with that at all? Like, how do you think that technology has impacted the world?
Right. And I'm going to say something, and once again, I can't get political, but I'm going to say something. To me, truth, by its very nature, is fixed. It's not up for debate. What's happened now is people think...
We are at the bottom of the hour.
Sorry.
Hold that thought, sir.
Hold on.
We do need
a quick break. And
a quick break.
Keep going.
All right.
Right here on Monster Talk Castle Radio.
Go get a nightcap.
We'll be right back, folks.
With me, I can see it in your eyes. Look as if your major tone has lost control. I must hold on. This happens all the time. I still find my faith in you. I can't hold on. This happens all the time. I still find my way to you. If a dream's all that I got, then I wish you in a fairy tale where you're still in love with me. I can see it in your eyes. Look as if your hero fell and lost his soul. I must hold on. This happens all the time. I still find my faith in you. I can't hold on. This happens all the time. I still find my way to you. To
trolls or us? Do you have an internet?
This is Jeff the Gray, co-host of Monster Castle Paranormal Radio on the KTLK Digital Broadcasting Network, thefringe.fm.
Hi, my name's Phil, and I've got a warehouse full of nails that I have to sell at big discount prices. All shapes, all sizes. I've got a surplus of nails that I have to sell. Just look at these babies. 2-inch finishing nails. Fine enough for Mom to hang small pictures around the house. While a 1-pound bag of 2-inch finishing nails could set you back 59 cents, but at Phil's Nails, I'll let you steal them for 56 cents a pound. That's right, 56 cents a pound. And feast your surprised eyes on these babies. 5-inch spikes with 3 8-inch head. That's right, a 3 8-inch head. Why, if you can't hit this nail on the head, then you need real thick glasses. They're strong enough to penetrate this 4x4 section of wet spruce, where other nails just crumple and curl and become playthings for ghetto kids. While a 1-pound bag of 5-inch spikes could set you back 89 cents a pound. But at Phil's Nails, I'll let you rob me blind for just 86 cents. That's right, 86 cents. I got concrete nails, roofing nails, double-headed nails, iron ox nails, all at big discount prices. So if you want nails, you come and see me. My name's Phil, and these are my nails. I want to save you some money. I'm at 3142 Danforth Boulevard, right next to a pile of old tires. I'm putting...
Coming up in a moment is Jeff the Gray. It's driving me nuts.
I saw wheels in the sky, all kind of colors, and they spin round, round, and those creatures. There was just wheels in the sky, wheels within wheels, all giant. I saw wheels in the sky. I saw lights, and they were spinning. Wheels.
We are back. All right. This is Wolfman Mike. Monster Castle Interactive Radio. We're on the air with Constantine St.Michael. Are you still there, sir?
Is he there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
How are you feeling?
Thanks for hanging in there.
Break. How are you feeling?
I feel fine. Actually, this is good because sometimes you just get into that groove, and this is a good group. You guys are asking good questions, and you're open to things. So I enjoy this. It's good.
Well, we're trying to do something to help people out here. I'm trying to make it more easily accessible. People can get on the air here. It's not a big station, but you can get in here and interact with it. You get it right in Discord. Ask questions in there, or join the voice chat room, and maybe even get right on the show with us. So it's a pretty cool opportunity.
It is
try
cool.
to set up a cool platform.
I agree. Good time.
And I can take calls if anyone if they just want to call in and they're listening on Spreaker. I have a call in number. I got Skype, 2 different Skypes. So we got like 3 lines.
Any questions?
And
Any
then
questions from the audience? Come on, people.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what he thinks of hallucinogenics. If they're bad.
Well, I've done many of them.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
So can I unlock?
Oh, that's what yeah.
Hey, I grew up in the 70s. I used to take LSD and go to high school.
Nice.
Time.
I did acid. I did a lot of acid. But I don't know if that's, when I did mushrooms, that's when I started, like, getting into the spirit world and seeing and realizing that I think it's like the 4th dimension, and that's where I get the stuff from.
Well, I think, once again, reality, everything is dual. So some people it may help, some people it may not help. I don't think that they're the ultimate answer to anything, because I don't think there is any ultimate answer to anything other than the actual answer, which is consciousness. So for some people, I think they probably do allow them to step outside of their day-to-day concept of what reality is. But I don't think it's a guarantee that tripping has a positive spiritual effect on you. I think
it doesn't unlock any abilities.
Yeah,
I disagree with that.
I've done a lot of natural stuff. I've done LSD, MDA, mescaline. I've actually never done mushrooms. But I don't know. I'm not into drugs at all anymore. I mean, it used to be everywhere. I've tripped for, and I don't think it helped me understand anything better than I already did, honestly. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I did LSD, it was fun for about 15 minutes. And then it was like, okay, I can come out now. I can be done with this at any time. It was always
Constantine, this is Lioness.
Hi. Do you have a question?
Well, I make a comment about the drugs. Like for me, sometimes to get in that state of process where I want to like my body, or I'm meditating, or I'm trying to get something to come through my psychicness or my intuitiveness, and I'm either stressed out or something is preventing me emotionally. What it does is it opens up my third eye. Now, the LSD and stuff, that's way too much because it lasts too long. It lasts way too long. Like I said, the first 10 minutes is great. It opens you up, and then you want it to stop because then you got 12 hours of seeing weird crap, and it's not real because it's just your body reacting to the chemicals. Even the natural stuff, but like pot, all it does is if I'm in that state, or I need to get to ground, or I need to come back to myself or open up myself because I'm trying to something's coming through and I'm not clear on it. It'll help me get to that state of mind where I can, just a way of saying it, to open up my third eye all the way. It's like it's not at half mast. And
yeah,
that's a great point.
And
I'm just going to add that unfortunately, the American perception of drug use is to get high and to trip, and I recommend anybody else to have somebody to help facilitate, and somebody who's experienced to be able to help facilitate it. Though I think people like you, Lioness, who have experience, you know what to expect, and you know where to go, and you can do it in a medicinal way. You're not just seeking to get high and party. So unfortunately, though, it's American
there are
culture.
times I have, there are times it's time and place, but that's it's a whole different frame of mind. But I use it more medically. But what I wanted to ask him is, when you have a spirit coming through, because I can know they're there. I don't see them, see them like in a 3D sense, but I know when something's there, and I've heard them. For you, they basically, I see how they talk to me. I know what they're saying to me. It's kind of like animals. I know what they're saying. It's kind of pictures in my head, and I'm usually pretty accurate. I was wondering, for you, are you like a trans medium, or because I didn't hear the part of the show, and my question is, when they come in, when a spirit comes to you and they're there, do you feel them energetically, or do you feel like sometimes they're talking to you and you're like a telephone booth? Because that happens to me sometimes. I'm just curious.
I think it's different all the time. Sometimes it's more like a direct connection, and they're literally it's like two people looking at each other in your mind. But I get information all different ways. So it's just like people. Spirits are people. So
Yes,
as every single person is
different plane
different.
of existence.
Yeah. So as every person is different, every spirit is different. They have different ways of communicating, and I think what you said earlier is you talk about drugs. Well, drugs are tools. You know, a hammer hits a nail, but it's not the house. It's just how the house gets built. So drugs are tools, but they're not the final answer. And as you said, you know, images in your mind, well, that's what I get too. It's an odd combination of emotional feeling and images in your mind and sensations and just this. It's kind of like if I'm saying the words, describing it, they're coming out of me without me. They're coming out of me directly. It's almost like I don't know what I'm going to say until I hear myself say it. You know what I mean?
I get it.
I couldn't hear anything for a minute.
Yeah, it's not like I rehearse it in my head and say it.
Yeah.
It's like I say it, and then I hear my own words, and then I understand. That's intuition. It's improvisational.
Okay, but I have a question. How about answering the big question? Do you believe there's some kind of a higher being? I'm not going to say God, because I don't believe in some male figure of God. I don't think you do either. Do you think there's some kind of a
creator,
divine, something sentience, a divine sentience that is in charge of the order or whatever of the universe?
No. There is no other.
There's no all.
There is no
seeing other.
It's
thing.
you. There is no other thing.
But what if I say we're all
It's
part
you.
of? What if it is us? We are all that.
It is us.
It's the all.
It's consciousness.
It's everything.
The only thing that exists is one single point of consciousness. It's unwavering. There's no waveform to it. It's singular. It's eternal. It doesn't budge. It's the ultimate truth, and that's consciousness, and we're all a part of it. Reality is the plane of duality. That's where we separate. Our separation is only in reality, and it's an illusion. Reality is an illusion. Reality is where time exists. There is no time in consciousness. It's eternal. It's truth. It's fixed. That's what people experience as God. Now, I say that, but you know what? Every human, in times of their deepest struggle, calls out for help. And that's okay. So it's okay to conceive of that being because it helps you manage your struggles. So I'll never fault someone for having that belief system because it helps them get through the night. It helps them be a better person. So in that sense, I would say, yes, I do believe in it. But I think it's a personalization that humans have to use to try and understand consciousness. Because most people are kind of trapped in reality, and they don't get to experience consciousness outside of reality. And if you're lucky enough, you can experience and then you look back at reality from a whole different perspective, as not being in it, as being outside of it, and observing it. That's why I was talking about going into nature. You want to develop your senses, be an observer of your own consciousness. Observe your consciousness. Observe what's your personality. And observe how you operate. And you'll find that you have a better understanding. But you know something? I fault no one for dropping to their knees and praying for help, because we've all done it. And we will all do it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Does it help?
I think it helps you manage your life, but I don't think that there's some other consciousness that either punishes you or assists you. We all get sick. We all get sick and die. Everyone experiences tragedy. Nobody escapes it. We all suffer. This is Buddha. Life is suffering. Life is literally a constant state of suffering, in a sense, because there's a sense of separation from that single consciousness. But if you think about it enough, that all drops away. And you realize that it's just life. Don't ever think that you'll never experience a life-changing event. You will. And when it happens to you, it's not necessarily because of something you did. You're not necessarily being punished. If you win the lottery, it's not a gift. Like, people will say, "Oh, you have it," to me. They'll say, "Oh, you have a gift." And I'll say, "No, I don't. I don't like that phrase, 'oh, gifted.' I'm not gifted. It's random. I just happen to be like this."
And you've worked
just
at it.
Random. Life is random. That's what produces anxiety. That's why people create religion, because nobody likes random.
No.
They want to know that if I say the right words, I'm going to be safe. It doesn't work. Look around you. It doesn't work. But we live in a culture. We have cultural practices. So if your family sits down at the table and says grace before they eat, that's fine. I'll say grace with you. Because at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same battle.
It gives you comfort. What's wrong with that?
It gives you comfort. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course not. I'd rather someone do that than take drugs, you know?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. We're in a very confusing time period right now, because the sense of an eternal truth is being lost. And it's that sense of eternal truth that really is the anchor of a person's life. And when you take that away, it's very hard to justify being alive. If you take that away, what's the value? Why go through all this bullshit? What's the point?
What is the point?
Hope.
To become more aware.
The point is, hope is the emotion of God. Hope is the emotion of life. Hope is life, is consciousness. You always have to remain hopeful. when I counsel people, in an unprofessional way. But if you look, for example, on Facebook, I'll post a lot and I'll say, never lose hope. Hope for hope's sake alone. Just create the feeling of hope inside yourself. Make it up. And you'll feel better. It's when people lose hope that they do horrible things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's right. Don't ever give up hope. And it's so easy to do that when bad things happen in your life. And you get numerous bad things happening, and you got to examine on what caused that. And if it's something that you can change and get away from, then just try something else and keep trying.
And plus, it's a physical response in your being and your emotional state. So the whole point of hope is it doesn't have to make sense. So even if you're in a hopeless situation, be hopeful. That's the point of it.
We went
just
full
by
circle
being hopeful.
We went full circle all the way back to the state motto of Rhode Island.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah, that's a great way to bring it back. So true.
Yeah. Okay.
Is thankfulness? What about being thankful?
Oh no, go ahead.
Hey, yeah. Thanks to everyone for coming out. That's what I got to say.
Yeah.
Oh, is it over?
Yeah, this is
5
good.
minutes left.
This is it.
Yeah. He's got a question. What's your question?
Go for
I was just going to ask. One of my favorite books is Praise Works. It's about being thankful for everything, even the bad stuff that happens to you. And I was wondering what your thoughts of that was.
Well, I mean, you can choose your attitude. I'll tell you, there are many times in my life where anger is just a great motivator. So it is. I've been in some very, very difficult situations, and sometimes just raw anger has just given me the energy to drive through it. And I don't mean in a hateful way. So, of course, you should be thankful. You know, if it's a sunny day, it's a sunny day. Life is ups and downs. It's not going to be good all the time. You know, it's just the way it is.
Well, it sure was good tonight.
Yeah. So, anyways, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me on and letting me ramble.
It was an honor, sir.
No,
it was an honor.
One time.
No, it was a great interview. I could keep going, but I can't believe that was 3 hours already.
Oh,
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's because it's good stuff.
I think this is going to be great listening back to this, everybody. I definitely want to encourage you to listen back to this on Spreaker, because even if you're in Discord here, you don't get the full quality of the sound I'm trying to do here, and there's like psychedelic stuff in the background, and I'm trying to keep my sound effects down and make it, present it in a way that everyone will sort of dig,
Well, I dig it.
I dig it too. We done digging.
I didn't overproduce it this time. Sometimes I throw too many drops in and stuff in, but now I'm trying to keep it.
I laid off the buttons today too.
Well, structured. The show is now structured, so, and we got a good platform, a solid platform to work off of.
Oh yeah,
that's a good thing, because we're having a conversation between people, and it's just that's how you do it.
Yeah, we started out pretty chaotic, and then I just brought structure in slowly, but
our show, you mean?
Yeah,
like in general.
I would say in general, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't ever expect
It's a
it
work
to
in
take
progress.
off. I used to call Art Bell all the time, and Darren and I used to call Richard C. Hoagland, and people liked us so much that I had all kinds of people asking me as a musician, can you not start your own show? So that's why I did it. And I said, all right, I'll do it. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had to learn everything from scratch, but I always wanted to be a broadcaster, so that's what I did. We got 1 minute left here. Man, that was a great show. That was so good.
Well, once again, thank you very much. Have a good night. Let's do it again. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Thanks to everybody. It was a great show, man.
Monster Castle Paranormal Digital Radio.
26 seconds. Visit my new website, monstercastleinteractiveradio.ca. Buy some t-shirts, man. Keep us on the air. Just go to the links page.